Ladies and gentlemen, a live recording, a crossover of your favorite podcast episodes. It is the eMLB Insiders of JR and Anju, and then you've got the Here's Why You're Wrong crew of myself and Brendan. Gentlemen, the eMLB trade deadline has come and gone. Boy, was it an exciting one. And what a time to be a part of the eMLB intro. First thing I'd like to do, and I feel like this is the right thing to do, is chatting from my account down there. But I'd like to welcome in Tim Lowry, who is now officially our Arizona Diamondbacks GM. Welcome in. Thank you so much. We appreciate you and welcome to the GM ranks. We'll be answering all your guys' questions throughout the day. Wow, thanks, Minerva. Thank you.
I'm not even sure if that makes sense, but I like it.
I don't know if it does.
I like this one too. Leave it to the president of the Jeff Saturday fan club to look like Andrew Luck.
Hey, if you want to hear more about that, wait for Joe's on the Pros, all right? We plan on recording another episode tomorrow. It should be out within the next few days, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to ride the high horse on it.
It's going to be Aiden Won't Shut Up About Saturday.
Yeah. I'm going to title this episode Saturdays for the Colts.
Saturday Night Live.
All right. So let's just hop right into it. Gentlemen, we'll talk more in depth about the trades that were made on the day, but let's start out. What were your first initial reactions of the trade deadline itself?
Wild.
That was one of it. Compared to last season, I think it matched the intensity of last year, because last year we had the infamous 3-team trade with myself, Aiden, and Sadier when Aiden was still on the Braves. But I think the moves that happened this time were just as impactful as a surprise 3-team trade. And the AL West is going to be fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
That's a scary division.
Oh, yeah. And imagine that division next year when we have the realignment.
Whew.
I feel bad for the AL Central teams that are going to be stuck in there.
Yeah, poor Minnesota, poor Kansas City, and poor expansion Portland.
Yeah. Sorry.
I mean, JR, even you made a whole lot of
I was a little
deadline.
Yeah, I was a little surprised there wasn't like the real bomb drop for the deadline, though. I felt like, maybe a couple of those had happened beforehand with, the DMAC trade and perhaps a couple others. But, it was there were definitely a few surprises in there that I was not expecting.
Yeah, that is true. The blockbusters happened earlier the year with the Vlad Jr. At the beginning of the season and then the DMAC in June. So I don't think any of the trades this time matched that, but there were a lot of big moves, especially when it comes to the AL West.
I think the biggest thing, too, that I take away from all this is that it showed that people are, okay, I know what I'm going for and I'm sticking to it. And I think maybe outside of one or two of the deals, this year, I feel like last year I looked at some of these deals and I go, oh, this team was ripped off, or oh, this team was ripped off. But this year I look at it and I go, okay, almost all of these deals seem relatively fair. Like, I don't feel like
sense.
I don't look at one of them and go, oh, this one got ripped off. I mean, Andrew, I hate to bring it up, but I'm going to. I feel like out of all of these so far, you were the one who maybe people were questioning the most with that Jeremy Frank deal of getting,
Well, eMLB Sportsnet was certainly questioning it.
Oh, eMLB Sportsnet was having your neck.
I'm just going to say, eMLB Sportsnet had my neck before on a trade, and I ended up on the better end of it. It wasn't as big as this one, but I do have receipts.
Yeah, Andrew has the receipts posted in the locker room, or the clubhouse, or whatever you want to call it.
I knew when I agreed to that trade that it was probably going to be it wasn't going to be like the biggest trade, but it was probably going to be the most surprising trade, given where my team was, and I just got to own it. I made the move.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall you look at it and it made the most sense. I mean, we'll go ahead. We prepared a little bit of graphics. I guess we'll start with Andrew's squad here. But Andrew, we'll start with yours just because we're talking about it. You lost Andre Dawson, a CCP, and Jeremy Frank. You added Seth Lonsway, Hank Bearden, Tom Shuey, and Kevin Place. What were your so I want to start. We'll talk about the Jeremy Frank deal first since we're already talking about it. Obviously, Shuey you've already called up and he's made an impact in his first sim. But what do you think long term? How do you feel like this plays out? Because pitching is at a premium, especially good left-handed pitching, and I feel like Jeremy Frank is one of the more elite left-handed pitchers in eMLB. So how do you feel like this is going to help your team moving forward? Because I look at it and I go, okay, yes, maybe Shuey, but you already have a really good offense. Losing more pitching, is that really going to help you?
Wait. You said I have a really good offense?
I
Let's
mean,
check the numbers on that.
Yeah, go look at my numbers.
sorry,
I
the
hope you
names
guys
on
took
your
the Pins
offense.
and the
The
Nationals.
names on your offense.
Yeah, but okay. I will talk through my reasoning for this. At the end of the day, and actually the funny thing is I was talking with Tom actually approached me about Jeremy Frank about sim time in like June-ish in terms of in-game timing. And at the time when he made the first offer, I was like, okay, that could actually make me think about moving Frank, because Frank is locked up for, I think, 4 years at over $20 million per year with a couple of player options at the end of it. And I was thinking, yeah, he had a really good rookie season, but based on my scouting evaluation of him and based on how he was performing this year, I felt like what he was doing this year was more in line with what I was going to expect moving forward. And if people are going to view him as an elite arm now, I want to see what I can get back for him, clear out this $20 million over the next 4 years to try to maybe add some pieces later on, or I'm going to have to sign some of these rookies or these guys that I haven't hit arbitration yet in the future. And this was the best return I could get. I got a third baseman in Shuey who is a switch hitter who has a graded 20 arm by my scout, which is huge for third base, is a better defender than all of the third basemen I had on my roster. I add a pitching prospect who is pitching really well in AAA right now in Hank Bearden, who plays to my park because he's a fly ball pitcher with a pitcher's park. And then Kevin Place fits my profile of the shortstops I like as a defense first speed guy, which is what I've already got in Tony Sawyer at the majors. Tom Sawyer is a book character.
Ladies and gentlemen, as well in the chat, if you guys have any questions you'd like for us to answer, please go ahead and drop them in the comments. We'll get to some of your questions throughout this episode of Here's Why You're, or the crossover episode, I should say. Sorry, I'm so used to saying Here's Why You're Wrong.
It's all right. Our show's more important, so you can use our name first.
Yeah, exactly. For those of you who are
that,
watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button as well while you're doing it. So let's also talk through your Andre Dawson for Seth Lonsway trade, because I think it made at least me look and go, what is going, like, why are you, what was your idea behind this trade? Because I know especially you and I had talked about Dawson a little bit, and it felt like you were actively shopping him as the CCP. Yep. Was there a reason behind actively shopping him?
Yes, there was, because I knew if I was moving Frank, I wanted to add back more pitching depth to my roster. And three of my top four prospects and 6 of my top 10 prospects are all outfielders. And so that is the biggest depth that I've got in my prospect pool. So I figure use one of them, try to get back a pitcher in return. And I added who I think is a pretty solid left-handed pitcher in Seth Lonsway. He's not going to be an ace that Frank looked like he was last year, but I feel like moving him out of Colorado, even though Sportsnet said he doesn't pitch well on the road anyway, I think moving him out of Colorado and putting him in St. Louis with a better defense behind him, a bigger pitcher's park, will help boost his numbers to be a middle of the rotation guy, a solid left-handed pitcher. And his first start, he had a scoreless outing, so it's looking good so far, but obviously that's just one start. So
I've actually got it pulled up right here. 5 1/3, 2 hits, no runs, 2 walks, 5 Ks.
And I'm wondering why my manager pulled him at 75 pitches, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean, I think it was a good piece to bring back a left-handed pitcher, and obviously he fits your profile. I think, it's always the wild card of the CCP, and none of us can never know what it did it. I think my question is, do you feel like you gave up too much for him?
If if his creator Avaderchi comes back and starts boosting him, yes. But the last time he was boosted was back in sim time back in April, and I have a Cardinal CCP chat, and he hadn't been responding in the chat, so I just kind of assumed he was an inactive person. And of course, when I announced the trade in the chat, he goes, "Thank you for the opportunity." And I'm like, okay, now he starts talking. But hey, I still do wish him the best in Colorado. I don't have any regrets about it. So,
All right.
yeah.
No,
Tom,
it's
my
true.
bad.
Tom, yeah, exactly. So,
Thanks,
all
Tom.
right, let's go ahead and move next to the other NL team who made a load of moves. I was looking at this when I was making this graphic, and JR, you were all over the place. We'll go ahead and take a look at some of your moves here. Talk to me a little bit about through it. Let's hold on. I'll pull up the exact moves so that way I get it right, because I don't want to be the dummy who just says, "Oh, you did this," and not actually know what you did. But
There's a lot of moving parts here.
I know I'm doing my best, people. I'm sorry. All right, go ahead and talk me through your first move here. Happened back on July 30th. Kyle Freeland to the Pirates for Kevin Hernandez. We know you've been trying to ditch Kyle Freeland, for lack of a better term, for a little bit. Talk me through that move a little bit.
Yeah, the first the first two moves I made were pretty low end moves from my standpoint. Freeland, just looking to get him kind of off the roster. I wanted to have some flexibility for this year's roster because I'm trying potentially to bring up Jimmy Potts, my CCP at AAA, to eventually start getting him some starts. And Freeland was there. Wilmer Fenelon doesn't have any options left. Tyler Baum doesn't have any options left back into my bullpen. So had a little bit of a roster crunch there anyway, but Freeland just was somebody that hadn't really panned out as a sign up and was really just looking to get rid of him for anything. Hernandez is a guy who signed a short-term deal as a young free agent. I think he still has a little bit of potential to be a decent kind of back into the bullpen arm. Potentially could get some value out of. He's lefty that's still only 25 years old, so there's a little bit of financial commitment there for the next couple seasons. But I was willing to do that to kind of get the roster flexibility with Freeland off the roster this year.
Yeah, for sure. And for all you out there who are talking about the real estate market in Cincinnati, JR single-handedly, you can go ahead and check out Dodgers prospect Joey Chestnut, the newest realtor on the eMLB blog.
If you guys don't know what you talk about, that means you're not in the Discord and you're not paying attention. So go join the Discord.
Andrew, can you drop the Discord invite link? I don't have it readily available.
I need to have. I'll go find it.
Thank you. Also, your next move, you basically bought. You did Anju, he did a soccer transfer at this point, $3 million.
He bought a player.
He bought a player. He bought Ernesto Hinojosa, a shortstop, a good defensive shortstop. Already has seen some time for you in the majors. So talk to me through that move a little bit.
Yeah, I had Elvis Martinez playing shortstop for me. And, eventually I ended up trading him, as you can see here, but I really didn't make this move for Hinojosa with any kind of trade of Martinez in mind. Martinez is a guy who has a really great glove, essentially at all three infield positions, second, short, and third. So I felt like, if I picked up another good defensive shortstop, I could easily drop him over to second base and kind of let him plug in there. I really liked Hinojosa's glove and thought I think he still has some potential to have his bat turn up a little bit, especially, with a little bit of off-season training here and there. I think that could, bump his hitting up a little bit to where that combined with being a plus defender can be a really good fit at shortstop.
Really shocked me that San Diego would just sell him for cash.
Yeah.
And not ask
Andrew,
for anything back.
I want to ask you, do you have anything against people buying players for cash?
No, I don't have anything against it. They just name it wrong. It's not a trade.
Listen. He can't get on a high horse about everything if he doesn't have a specific thing to be on a high horse about.
All right, let's move through your next move, which you sent Lance McCullers to Boston for dead CCP, I should say, Brent Utley and Rogelio Ramos, a starting pitching prospect who made his first appearance in Dayton, went 5 1/3 innings, walking 3, striking out 7, as well as, hold on, just trying to see here, and gave up 4 runs, all of them earned on 5 hits for you on 92 pitches. So talk to me a little bit about what that move was for you. You obviously gained 2 players for Lance McCullers, who contract-wise is got $19 million this season, and then has a player opt out, and then $20 million over the next 2 seasons.
He ain't opted out of that.
You'd be stupid to opt out of that.
Yeah, I with McCullers, I had kind of shopped him around a little bit last off season, even last season at the deadline. And actually, Billy with the Red Sox knowing their starting pitching need, he was somebody I had reached out to both of those times to see if he was interested. I mean, McCullers is one of those starters where he, just in a vacuum, he's still sort of a decent starting pitcher, and his profile as a ground baller, still worked in my ballpark. But, knowing with that salary in mind, and again, that there's a couple of, young starting pitchers that I wouldn't mind moving into that spot and potentially using that money elsewhere. And he's definitely somebody that I tried to pitch around a little bit. Billy actually was the one that initiated the talks back on him this deadline. I had kind of, resigned myself that I wasn't going to move him come, Saturday night. And Saturday night, Billy reached out. So it was kind of something that came together pretty quickly there. Utley, I know, that his creator, so to speak, is on the permanent banned list.
The player formerly known as a CCP.
Right. the ex-CCP. So, not expecting obviously that to turn into a big stud player there, but he still has some pretty decent potentials as a hitter, to turn into a solid player potentially. Ramos was the pitcher that I really had my eye on a little bit when I was talking to Billy about McCullers. I definitely wanted to get one good starting pitching prospect out of it. And I really liked, his kind of mix of pitches. I think he has, a pretty unique set of pitches there. He's still developing a little bit, obviously, but, I think he has the potential there to be a pretty solid starter in the future. So he was somebody that I was pretty happy to add there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you honestly you shed a good amount of money, because he's definitely not going to opt out of that contract. You shed a good amount of money. You add a really good young starting pitcher and a little bit of a flyer in the other part of that, but you really end up on a good side of that. Utley, he might be able to do something on it, but it'll be interesting. So let's go ahead and talk about our
one more note on this on the McCullers deal. I actually think that's a really good deal for both teams. Obviously, if JR had gotten anything at all, it's a win, because he's shedding the salary and no one else was going after McCullers. And for Billy, starting pitching is the Achilles heel in Boston. It's the one thing that keeps this team from being on the same level as the AL West teams. Bringing in, they have the money. They are one of the biggest budget teams in the league. I think McCullers is a perfect player to add to that squad.
Yeah, that's why I even had reached out to Billy a couple times asking, because again, if you take the money away, he's still a 4 or 5 starter on a good team that can be okay back there. And if you have the cash that you can handle that salary, why not add him to a rotation that needs some help? So I like you said, I think it worked out well for both. It's not, it wasn't a huge price for him to pay. It's not like he, overpaid just because there wasn't much starting pitching on the market. So I think it worked out.
Yeah, for sure. We'll also go ahead. Hold on, I'll pull up. We'll talk about your last deal here, which was you sent Jordan Hicks, who
Big one.
a big deal. Jordan Hicks and Orelvis Martinez to Seattle for Javi Baez, which they're retaining 20%. Rogelio Garces, so another Rogelio, Josh Schuler, and Zach Hendrickson. I ask a lot of questions about this one because you send your starting shortstop in Orelvis Martinez. Yes, you past 2 seasons hasn't been great, but defensively is one of the better shortstops in the league. What's your mindset on this here?
Well, first of all, Hicks was a guy I knew I was going to trade at the deadline. There was, 3 or 4 AL contending teams that were interested in him. Another team from the National League reached out, so there was definitely interest there to move him. Martinez was a guy who, I really liked his glove, but I just feel like he hasn't been able to put it together with his bat, and his bat ratings have slacked off a little bit over the last the last season or so in sim time, and it just worries me that at that age for that to already kind of slack off. I just don't know that bat is ever going to be anything to keep him a starter for the long term. So despite the defense, especially because this deal came together after I had picked up Hinojosa. So knowing that I had him that I could potentially slot in there at the shortstop spot, and I felt free kind of including him in this deal. The Baez piece of it is where it's a real bit of a risk for me. I completely recognize that bringing him in. Hetz is retaining, like you said, 20 of a salary moving ahead, so it takes a little bit of the sting off there. But I still has a really good glove, especially at second base. So I can combine him and Hinojosa there up the middle and have pretty good defense there up the middle until another second base option may come along, and then maybe during the last season or two of his deal, he's kind of a utility guy in the infield for me, and he can benefit a little bit from hitting at Great American, perhaps. So, I thought it was a little bit of a risk that was worth taking there.
Javier
He
Baez
hit
is in
15 home runs last year. So far in Seattle, he's had 8. So Great American's definitely a lot more of a friendly ballpark for him to play in.
Javier Baez in his 5th year of an 8-year, $134 million contract that he signed. So a little bit of a high price tag on that.
He mashes left-handed pitching, I think. Yeah, mashes left-handed pitching.
Yeah.
So you stick him in that lineup against lefties, he's gonna hit well, especially at Great American Ballpark. Righties it's a very stark difference between the two. And I looked at it because I was also in discussions with Seattle about Javi Baez. I just didn't want to handle the contract, honestly.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's go ahead and move. Let's move to Baltimore, where a lot more additions, or a lot less additions than JR, but a lot more subtractions on the other side, but different types of additions. Let's go ahead and start with your first deal here. You sent Gene Hughes, Alfredo Vea, George Valera, and Danny Johnson to Minnesota for Brandon Woodruff. Woodruff, who is a upcoming free agent. Here, 40% of his salary is retained by the Toronto Blue Jays, so not a whole lot of salary hit even for a rental for you here. Talk to me through that deal of bringing in Woodruff.
Yeah, no, I like how we went for the big one first. This deal's a big gamble. I don't like gambling very much. I feel like it was the appropriate time. Starting pitching was not what was not very available at this deadline, unless you are willing to take on a contract like Jeremy Frank, or pony up a CCP like Andre Dawson to get Lonsway. So I knew that I would have to put together a bigger package that I was probably comfortable with to get a quality veteran arm. I'm nervous about the deal, but cautiously optimistic. I think if it gets me into the playoffs and gets me deep into the playoffs, it's a win no matter what.
I think this might be one of the more lopsided deals when we look at it at the end. You know my thoughts on Vea. I think he is going to be very good. I think he just needs some more time to develop. You know my love for Gene Hughes. I didn't want to get rid of him when I was with Atlanta.
I would have held on to him too if I thought that he was going to be a quality starter anytime within the next year.
George Valera is interesting. We'll see if he can semi get back to what he maybe was a little bit with Kansas City, and then Danny Johnson as well, a younger guy, high movement, which is big in the OOTP 23 engine. So it'll be interesting to see how he performs. Went 5 2/3 without giving up a run in his debut with Pensacola for the Minnesota Twins. So interesting move that could come back to bite you in the butt a little bit.
It could, but JR and I actually were talking about this one right after it was announced in the eMLB general chat, and if this move gets me deep in the playoffs or to another World Series, it's all forgiven. You're trading those prospects for immediate results now. The only way you regret this deal is if you don't get those results.
Yeah, that's why that's essentially why it's a gamble, right? I mean, it is that those could be guys that would be beneficial for you down the road, but the goal of prospects is to win with them. So whether you win with them or you win because of them, you're making a move. Either way works.
Hebrew, are you trying to say you have breaking news? Oh, he does. Zero GM say that a trade will make or break.
O's GM.
Oh, OGM says that trade will make or break owner threatening termination? ?
My owner's pretty happy. I think my owner's pretty happy with me. I did crunched the numbers on this. Since the start of the 2024 season, only 3 teams have a better winning percentage than the Baltimore Orioles.
Who are those teams? I'm curious now.
In order going up, it is the Washington Nationals, the Houston Astros, and the Los Angeles Angels.
AL West strikes again.
Yes.
All right. Next deal you made, Brennan. Chris Robinson and Juan Valle to Los Angeles for Brainer Zimmers, who is now your left-handed or left fielder against right-handed pitching that you were looking to add.
Yeah, it's not mentioned on there because I made this deal right before, but I went into the deadline planning to add 2 starters, 2 relievers, and a left field versus righties. I've been talking to Tom about Zimmers pretty much since the season started on and off, and we never really could quite agree on how to value him because he just destroys minor league pitching, but his ratings aren't super friendly. We were talking about it, I think maybe Sunday, and Chris Robinson got thrown in there, and I said no because I liked Chris Robinson, wanted to hold on.
Yeah, you had just gotten him from me.
Mm-hmm. But the morning of the deadline, I caved in. I was like, you know what? I really want Zimmers. I'm willing to do it, and that was enough to get it done. And the early returns are looking pretty good. He's got 2 doubles, a home run, and 16 plate appearances so far.
Think about it this way: you flipped Nate Lowe for Brainer Zimmers.
That's a win.
Yeah, because I just DFA'd Lowe.
That
was a loss on my part.
Going away from the trade talk for a second, I want to bring up what
I love
Hebrew
this
said
story.
here. This was a great story, and this is the kind of stories we love to tell. The game was on the line. This is talking about Bobby Orr, by the way, for those of you who are not in the Twitch channel, who are watching on YouTube. The game was on the line with 2 outs in the top of the 8th inning, but Sir Anthony Dominguez didn't flinch. With the bases loaded and Philadelphia trailing 4-2, Dominguez retired Bobby Orr to end the threat. Nothing to it, said Dominguez with a wink. Yeah, Bobby Orr is – I like what Hebrew was closing – or hold on, who said it? It was Tim said, Bobby Orr must have done something yet again. First offensive closer in baseball history. I mean, the man knows how to come up big. So
man's clutch.
Except in this spot.
In this spot.
Can't be 100%, right?
No, can't be 100% clutch.
By the way, Hebrew reminding us that it was OOTP generated. So
which we love.
We love
OOTP generates some off the wall stuff, but then something crazier happens in the real life MLB and OOTP. I followed the OOTP Twitter. He's like, hey, look, it's not that crazy. I love it.
Hey, fell through barn roof.
Fell through barn roof.
Well, who? Oh, I can't remember. Jr.
Mrs.
Who was the
Machado?
horse whisperer? Who was the horse whisperer?
Phil
Oh,
Urban.
Phil Irvin, the horse whisperer, got
Oh,
kicked in
yeah.
got kicked by a horse.
well, how about Machado, who was left
Mrs.
under
Machado.
marital duties after a unfortunate fireworks accident.
All right, and your last
Tim,
trade you made.
or, hold on, Tim saying Bobby Orr didn't deliver once. #trash. Got to send him back down to the minors.
Yeah, back to AAA. Just send him to Lehigh. Just send him to Lehigh Valley.
That's right.
So your last trade, Julian Fernandez bringing in a reliever for Noah Smith. You and I have talked about Noah Smith extensively. Smith just kind of log jammed by a loaded infield that you have never really had a shot at the majors in Baltimore.
No, he's not really a player who fits the Baltimore mold, and I hate saying that because I don't really have a mold of player. He's a
Yes, you do.
good. He's a good utility defender. He's really fast, weak hitter.
He's just kind of
the
there.
Perfect player to play for Texas. Like that right there describes much of the Texas lineup. Julian Fernandez is in last year's deal. He's obviously a really good reliever for his history. I feel like that's a perfect match right there. Get a good rental reliever for a guy who was never really going to play for my team.
Yeah, Noah Smith is one of those players that's just kind of there. Like he's just, he's just an average type player. I mean, Brennan and I mean, you and I had talked about him potentially when we were talking about Hicks, and he was just kind of one of those guys. Like he could be an okay guy to add to your team, but he's not somebody that you're going to get real excited about.
I don't think that there's a trade negotiation I haven't offered him in. Yeah. He's just existed as a trade chip.
You never.
He's a
offered
great backup. He's a great backup infielder.
Yeah. He's a good utility, man. He can play every spot. He can play outfield. He can play infield. He will steal bases, and he will probably hit, 230, 300, 340, for his career. Yeah. Great backup utility guy. Not someone you're going to lean on every day.
For sure. We'll see how these moves impact you as you go through leading the AL East currently over Boston. We'll move on to last but certainly not least myself, who less moves happen. But
by that, I would definitely say least because you made the least amount of moves.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, least. So first move, Edwin Uceta for Kyle Zurak. And I'll defend this one in the fact that it was basically two very similar relievers that were traded for each other. Zurak just kind of fit my mold that I like for my pitchers a little bit better, had a little bit better movement versus and had a little bit better stats. Also went from an extreme fly ball guy to a ground ball guy, which I like, added a little bit of velocity. And, I'll laugh about this one because Eddie came to me and literally was like, hey, minor trade. I'm like, okay, what's up? He goes, this for this. I look at it. I'm like, okay, Zurak fits what I'm going for. They both have similar amount of control left. Sure, let's do it. So it wasn't really a whole lot of negotiation for it.
That happens. That's happened to me with Eddie too, where he just comes at you and goes, here's this little tiny deal. Want to do it?
Yeah. Like sure.
And the funny thing is, OSA has them both rated 50-50s.
Yeah.
So it's like it seemed like just an even swap across the board.
This was the most nothing burger, meaningless trade on the deadline.
Yes. I agree. But you know what? I was happy with it. The next one, which I know some people are saying, oh, what am I doing here? Seeing as how I have Fritz Flaherty at second base.
It's because you wanted a CCP.
I got Joel Cuniel and Dave Rudolph for Danielle Freak. And there were two reasons. One, Donnie, I'm good friends with Donnie. I talk to him relatively frequently. I'm in his streams a decent amount. Good friends with him. So that was part of it. And part of it was, I knew Cuniel was going somewhere at this deadline. Dave Rudolph, I have a plethora. Oh, I forgot my $2 million cash. That's right. I did get $2 million cash in this deal as well. But I also, Danielle Freak has the ability to play multiple positions. Dave Rudolph didn't really have the defensive prowess in the outfield. Definitely has a great bat, but I have a lot of outfield talent in my minor league system that I felt like this could be a move. Plus, again, the unknown entity of the CCP, who knows how much Danielle will continue to boost. Who knows what he's going to do. we already saw him in the chat earlier tonight talking about, yes, he has come to Tampa. So he's excited about it. And it's cool. It's a fun little endeavor that it was a good opportunity where I felt like I can make my minor leagues better and make my team better as a whole going forward for an expiring reliever and an outfielder who didn't really see a spot. Also, with having Mayhall in my team, where Rudolph would have to be a first baseman or DH, where I have log jams at all three of those spots. So for me, it was okay. I could upgrade a place where a utility piece who is a CCP and get rid of two guys who, don't necessarily have a spot on my team, with Cuniel being an expiring contract and Rudolph not really having a spot.
I also really love the deal from San Francisco's angle. Like, giving up Daniel Freak does kind of suck here for them, but at the moment, Cuniel is a premier bullpen arm. He's not some guy who's going to pitch 60 innings a year. This year he's already thrown well over 70 with a third of the season left. He's going to go over 100 innings on the year. That is massive out of the bullpen. So I feel like that is something that's going to really help San Francisco's chances as they try to chase a division pennant this year, because right now the two best teams in the National League are in the West, just like in the American League. And it's really going to be a desperate chase to avoid being the one that has to play in the wildcard game.
Yeah, I mean, you see the stats. The stats speak for themselves right there. I mean, so with me, he pitched 74 and a third to a 2.66 ERA, was an all-star. I mean, most of that wasn't under me necessarily. A lot of that was under Charles, but he's a good player. And, it hurt to get rid of him, but at the same time, I knew he was a guy that could help a team that's probably closer to the postseason, and a guy where it didn't make sense for me to hold on to him when I can add a really good prospect in return. Because I know I was talking to multiple teams about Cuniel. I mean, I know JR, you and I, and again, I look back at it now and I go, why were we even talking about this? But we talked about swapping Cuniel and Hicks, essentially, with some other pieces involved as well. But yeah. I think at the end of the day, this was probably best case scenario for me with Cuniel and the best deal I probably could have gotten out of it.
Yeah, it reminds me of the trade I made last year when I added Knebel from the Yankees. It's a very similar type of trade where you add that lockdown bullpen arm for a playoff run.
Yeah, I think this sets up Sean real well for the postseason. Let's go ahead and look at some of the other moves that were made at this deadline. We'll start with the New York Yankees trading another CCP, Papa Vaz, on Twitch, a 22-year-old shortstop prospect. He heads to Pittsburgh for Kevin Milligan, a second base CCP of Tactical Stats. The notes from eMLB Sportsnet: Milligan, a 21-year-old from Pittsburgh, will unfortunately be leaving his hometown and heading to the Yankees in a prospect-for-prospect move. This was really just a prospect-for-prospect move that you sit here and go, not really any impact today. Cody sort of clearing a 40-man roster spot with having him leave, but that's about it. Not another meaningless deal.
This is pretty straightforward. CCP for CCP at the same even the same position, right? Yeah, same position. Also, I believe Papa Vaz is a Pirates fan.
No, he's a former Atlanta Brave farmhand. He's a big Roberto Clemente fan.
That's what it was.
But,
I knew it was
but he's
something.
a big Braves fan.
Yeah, and I know Cody's. I'm pretty sure Cody's in Papa Vaz's stream a lot, so it makes sense for him to try to nab him here.
And see Pirate making it known that he tried to trade both Trey Turner and Scooter Gennett, but
actually, I was very close to moving Leclerc, but Leclerc also exercised a no trade clause.
I was very close to acquiring Scooter Gennett, but the no trade clause hindered me to do so. It kind of sucks a little bit. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next deal. Another relatively small deal. Keston Hira heading from San Diego back to Milwaukee. I'll say back to Milwaukee because I'm not sure exactly. Or yes, he was in Milwaukee in this. And then Juan Flores, a rookie ball prospect, heading to San Diego in return. I don't know exactly what this deal is, in my opinion. It just makes me sit here and go, huh?
Well, it's the Padres offloading a player that they had absolutely no use for because they had a bunch of better players at the positions that Hira could play. Plus, Hira is locked up for the next 4 seasons after this one at an average of around $10 million. So it clears off that spot off the books. And honestly, they just were like, throw me a mid-level prospect because I'm getting this player off the books, someone I don't need, someone who probably wasn't going to get claimed on waivers. Just get what you can from them and clear that contract off the books and move on because you didn't really have a spot for him anymore with the other players you got.
And headphone users beware, but this means this could start the spell of Leroy Jenkins. I'm excited.
You didn't go into it as hard as Commish does.
No, I
No.
my voice is a little shot right now. I don't think I can go into it as hard as Commish, but I'm excited to see that. Would have loved to have Heroes leadership in Chicago, but holding down him first with Joey Best and Nate Lewis holding down first.
It's interesting coming from Lowry because he's the Diamondbacks GM, but has a player in Chicago. That's why.
Yeah,
it's confused me for a second.
Yeah.
Pirates saying you may have to re-sign Jeanette for one more year. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Jason, for the Brewers, he was definitely looking to add, a bat to kind of help for this year and moving forward. And it's a little bit of a financial commitment for him, but I don't think it cost him too much, from the player side at least. So, that I think that might kind of fit what he was after there.
Long-term financial commitments don't really scare off Milwaukee, though.
No.
Well,
sure.
yeah.
No,
exactly.
I mean, he was paying $40 million to Yelich over how many years? So
yeah.
Speaking of another Milwaukee trade, Milwaukee will send Steve Duchette and $2 million cash to Texas for center fielder Eddie English. Another sort of minor deal, but again, we're seeing what Jay Hill wants to do here and what he sort of looks for in some of his players.
Yeah, English is a pretty good, versatile outfielder. I had inquired with Jamie about him in the offseason. I thought he had some good intangibles that really could make him, a good pickup, even if he doesn't end up being a starter, and even if he's more of a fourth outfielder.
Yeah, honestly, I was about to start talking to Jamie about English, but then I noticed that he scratched him off of his trade list. I was like, oh, dang. And then when I looked at what he got, I was like, I might have given a little bit more than what Milwaukee gave up for it. But because high-quality defensive center fielders are hard to find, and Eddie English is that. And he's got the profile to maybe hit around league average, which is really good for a defensive-minded center fielder. Now, so far in the majors, he's not hitting well at all. But if he can get to around where he was hitting in the minors, which is a little bit below league average, then he could turn into a mainstay in center field, just based mostly on his defense. But if he keeps hitting like he has been in the majors, that's going to be an issue. Sitting under 200, by the way, for his career. Now, to be fair, it's only like 20 games so far, 18 with Texas, and then he just played his first game with Milwaukee. So more to come on that one, but right now he's not developing well for a hitter in the majors, but his defense will always play.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with more sample size.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that defense definitely helps in Milwaukee's ballpark too. It's definitely good to have a premier, defensive center fielder there.
I mean, he slid right into the starting center fielder spot. I don't know who he was playing there earlier. Who would that have been?
I don't know if it was Akil Badu.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely increases the center fielder defense by a long shot.
Oh. Go ahead and read off this next deal, and I'm also going to read what eMLB Sportsnet had to say about this one. It's probably one of my favorite comments that was under this. Texas sends J.P. Crawford to Miami for Josh Staumont and $1 million cash. The note from eMLB Sportsnet insider, whoever it is. This one makes us scratch our heads, but we just assume swapping problem child for problem child and fill a short-term need the rest of this season. It's also very possible Crawford is getting ready to ride Eddie Sunder's famous DFA train for the rest of the season. Google juggler and just put random washed-up veteran's name on a ball in the air, waiting for the cycle to finish. It's mesmerizing that we here at MLB Sportsnet still don't get the plan to, other than we understand some fines have been assessed when forgetting to inform the commissioner's office of a corresponding transaction when a DFA window closes mid-sim. We see you, Eddie.
He got called out.
He did.
This
Got
one
put on blast. I'm not the only one.
I think this one was said properly. Problem child for problem child makes you scratch your head and go, what?
You know what? We talked about one Eddie meaningless trade, and we got another one.
Yeah, this is one that if this was on a regular Insider podcast, this would hit the old skip button.
Yeah, because if we had done a regular Insider podcast, we would have okay, what are the major trades? Because we know we talk for a long time about everything, so we would just be like, let's narrow it down to just a few, shall we?
I think you
and that would have been
only
out the door.
because what the eMLB Sportsnet says about it.
That's fair.
And this is one time when I can say, eMLB Sportsnet, here's why you're right, because that was the exact way to say this.
I mean, I don't know if he had to put Eddie on blast for the fines that he's been receiving, but
nah, I love it.
All right.
Little ribbon on the
Eddie.
square.
Shots fired.
All right, let's
Sorry.
go ahead and move on to the next deal. Danny Jansen heads away from Texas. He goes to San Francisco for Luis Maldonado and $10 million cash. Lola Thurman has emerged as the top catcher in Texas, as many of us suggested. So this was a way to get sort of rid of Danny Jansen's contract in a sense. And you had a decent arm, plus you bring in some cash. I love this deal for Texas.
I love this deal for San Francisco because catcher was a huge need for them. Their offense has been struggling. Danny Jansen is one of the better offensive catchers in the league. He's not near the top, and he's not gonna blow you away, but he is definitely better than what they had before, for sure. And he's not really gonna give up much defensively as well. I love this move for San Francisco.
I think this is great for both sides because Texas did have a bit of a surplus at catcher. They get back a really good starting pitching prospect, and obviously San Francisco's going for it. I love it. I love it. They're not sitting on their hands. They addressed two areas that really needed to be addressed on their team at the deadline. This is a team I'm really excited to watch down the stretch.
And they didn't I've talked about teams overdoing things to try to make a playoff push. I don't think San Francisco overdid it with the moves that they made. They made moves that made sense, which made their team definitely better. With the Kunal trade, with the Jansen trade, kudos to San Francisco. They might be one of my winners at the deadline if you're not talking about superstar names.
Which save that. We'll get to that in just a few minutes.
I know. I stopped.
Yeah, real quick on San Francisco. I definitely like this deal getting Jansen because again, for the reasons you guys mentioned, I was a little surprised that maybe they weren't able to add a outfield bat to help out the offense. I mean, I don't know how many of those were out there that were really being shot, but I was a little surprised that they didn't go after one of those, or maybe they did and just couldn't get a deal done. But I really thought that they were going to add an outfield bat here at the deadline.
I mean, the bats that they have right now aren't that bad. I mean, Dan King and Bako Kong are around league average, and then Isaiah Thomas is above league average right now in terms of OPS plus and WRC plus. So I don't think it was catcher was a bigger need than outfield, and they addressed the catcher need. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Sean saying wasn't eating $35 million a year.
Oh, so he's saying he had money to spend. That's why he was able to throw over the 10 mil.
Throw over the 10 mil. That's fair. Next trade, New York Yankees getting a little active at the deadline. You love to see it. You love to see Pete getting a tad bit active. Sending Miguel Andujar to Minnesota for Mark Burton and Ron Lara. This comes with, I believe it's Willy Adames got injured for, I want to say, 8 weeks, if I remember properly. Suzuki talks. That's
okay. What he meant by 35 mil.
Okay. We'll get to Suzuki. But, so, Yankees making a deal here. I like this deal for both sides, but specifically for Minnesota, who are really going for it and pushing for that Central where it's a neck-and-neck race between them and Cleveland, with Chicago just sneaking up in the back there.
Yeah, honestly, I was looking for like blah, blah, blah. If I could talk, that would be great. JR and I have talked before on a prior podcast where myself and the Twins were in a very similar situation where we had really good performing pitching, but our bats were underperforming, and that we were both going to try to address the offensive needs. I also looked at Andujar. I thought maybe a little bit too rich for my blood at 31 years old. I don't know. Maybe I'm just over analyzing the amount of a contract. But this trade, what's that?
Just being overly stingy.
Yeah, probably, which is interesting with given my budget. But regardless, um, I think that this is another trade that makes sense for both sides. Minnesota adds a bat that they needed, and New York gets a couple of decent prospects back. I was also looking at Mark Burton. The only thing that scared me away is his stamina. I was worried about his ability to pitch deep into ball games. I will ask the question, though. Do you guys think that the Yankees made this trade before or after agreeing to another trade that we're going to talk about later involving a third baseman?
Probably before.
I think before, and then the other trade presented itself, and they just had to go for it.
Yeah,
We'll talk about that one later.
I'm a little surprised that they couldn't have gotten more for Andujar, to be honest. I mean, I don't know that I would have been in that big of a hurry to move him for a deal like this. I mean, he still is signed for next year at around $10 million, which really isn't too bad of a price tag. He's not going to take the player option after that for $10 million, I wouldn't think. But I would have thought that maybe they could have gotten a little more for a guy with his skill set and his performance.
Perhaps.
We got breaking news from Washington. Joe Diggs out 6 weeks with a shoulder injury. GM Pirate saying might be the beginning of the end for the Nationals this year. Although we keep talking about how the Phillies are vastly outperforming their run differential, so that race is still up for grabs in my opinion.
Oh yeah. So
we'll see what happens there.
Before we get to the next New York Yankee trade, let's talk about another Miami trade and Minnesota trade. Andrew Heaney, Willie Gonzalez, and Pierre-Antonio Spatielli.
Pierre Antonio
Spatielli head to Minnesota for Jake Lamb, Mason Bryant, and Maverick Buffo. Yeah.
Another okay, sure, trade.
Another trade for two aging veterans who are both on minor league contracts, and it's just sort of a it's pronounced Joe Smith. Veterans on minor league contracts who great. You just switch some random things off and
yeah, this is a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing.
My guess is maybe Andrew Heaney might be able to be like a bullpen piece for Minnesota late in a run if they need him to be, a late innings eater potentially. If a guy goes down to an injury, that's really where I can see this one going. And for Miami, this is probably more of Jake Lamb is probably a very popular player or something like that, and Eddie's just trying to put butts in the seats in Miami. And I think Tim said it's right. It's the classic I made a trade. We have a good amount of those.
I think Eddie saw everyone else having so much fun at the deadline and just wanted to be a part of it.
I think so. Has Jake Lamb already been selected contract wise to the major league roster?
No, I don't see him on there.
Oh.
Already been released.
Really?
No, I'm joking. Be funny.
I'm trying to find what happened to him. I don't see him in the waivers either.
Hold on, let's look at him.
No, he's on AAA.
Straight to AAA.
Jake Lambo Lamb.
Extremely popular locally, and then just flip him to triple. Get the fan interest up, and then dump him AAA.
Yep. Makes a ton of sense. Hasn't played a game in AAA yet. All right. Next deal we have is a big one. The man who is now living out of a suitcase because he can't spend more than 6 months in a specific location at this
But he's
point.
being paid to do so.
But he's being paid pardon me, Andrew, in editing, you might have to bleep this out. He is making a load of money. I just wanted to give you a little heart attack there for a second, just to make you see.
I didn't start. I didn't start my timestamp software, so that would have sucked for me to have to find again.
Yeah. Jose Ramirez heads to the Big Apple for Ray Walker, Jim Heeks, Sergio Soto, Jeremy Becker, and Tim Metzler. Minerva, I think this is one of the first times where I can say this. Tip of the cap to you. You made out well in this trade. And you know what? If anyone can afford him, it's New York.
And it's not even really because of the prospects. It's because he found someone that was able to take on all of Jose Ramirez's contract. He did not have to retain anything. He is free and clear. He is at recognizing this year that he's at the bottom of the division. He is more than likely not going to repeat as AL Central champions. It's like, all right, let me see what I can get for Ramirez, and ended up with 5 prospects, which is good when you're trying to rebuild.
You know, I think that this right here is the quintessential Yankees move, and I'm really happy to see it in the MLB because these Yankees have not been the Yankees, at least as long as I've been in the league.
Apparently they weren't in 1.0, huh, JR?
They sucked.
Putting together an offer for a high-performing big name and way overpriced bat is something exactly the Yankees would do, because the Yankees can pay him.
Yeah, absolutely. And they don't really have a lot of big name contracts on their payroll right now. They can start spending. Now here's the interesting thing is that Minerva did reveal that the other team that was close to getting J-Ram was in fact the Los Angeles Angels, who we already talked about added Frank. So they would have added over 50 million, close to 60 million in payroll if they had made both of those trades.
Yep. And they still might have had money to do things.
And they're already paying Morey 60 million and Trout like 30, 40 million, something like that. Jeez.
Sick.
Big budget, man. They got the biggest budget in the league.
Yeah, for sure.
Do that? It's in the league?
Let's move on to the biggest deal of the deadline. Let's move on to the most exciting deal of the deadline.
Yes.
AL
they're
West.
tied with the Astros.
The AL West.
What's that? Go ahead.
What did you say, Brendan?
So they're tied with the Astros, 340.
Yeah. The AL West gets even more crazy as Seiya Suzuki, the originator of the Seiya Suzuki rule, heads to Houston from Colorado in exchange for Mike Moeller, Tyler O'Neill, Tim Carlin, and Eric Radford. What a deal on both sides of the table.
I think Colorado could have gotten more.
I think Colorado was just happy to have his contract off the books.
I agree, but knowing the players that Houston has and the depth of their farm system as well, because I've talked. Ben was one of the most active trade negotiators at the deadline. I feel like he was talking to almost everyone, me included. Like he's got a lot of players in the minors that he could have added to this that I think Colorado should have asked for. And I think, you talk about the fact that Houston has to take on that contract, but they can afford it. They have the talent to be able to add a prospect or two more than what they did give. And I think Houston wins the trade because they could have given up more.
You know what? I said that they might be happy to have the contract off the books, but then I went and looked. Colorado is actually 6th in budget.
But I think
not 6th. I'm sorry. 10. They're 10th. 208. They have 280 million.
Colorado
In
is
budget
in
or payroll.
Budget.
Okay.
Colorado's in a rebuild. Colorado's in a rebuild, and I understand they can afford Seiya, but at some point, do you go, okay, let's flip this for prospects. Let's go full rebuild and see what we really can do. And I mean, I don't hate this move. Like you said, they probably could have gotten more. But I think at the end of the day, if you're Mike in Colorado, you got to be happy with your setting your team up for the future. And you've definitely got some things that you can do down the line.
Yeah, but you're talking about one of the best hitters in the National League, and the only top 100 prospect you got is number 57, Tim Carlin. And you also add Tyler O'Neill, 31 years old, $3 million free agent after this season,
Who's already been waived.
Who's already been waived, and then Mike Mueller, who's a decent second baseman, but he's not going to be someone who's going to like be someone who's an all-star year in, year out. And Eric Radford is meh. They should have had another one, maybe even two top 100 prospects coming back.
Here's
This
the thing:
is
the
second
top
time that
100.
Houston has done this to Colorado now.
The top 100, in my opinion, especially in this league, doesn't mean anything because OSA is stupid when it comes to top 100. And I think what the fact of the matter is that he dumps salary, and also he's these players may not be all-stars or anything like that, but I think if we look at it with the WAR or however you want to look at it, and I know WAR is not a great stat to look at, but I feel like these guys that he added can make up for what was lost in Suzuki total and WAR. Plus, you're opening up money to sign other free agents, make another big trade. We don't know what Mike has up his sleeve for this offseason.
I'm just saying you should have gotten one more quality prospect for a player of Suzuki's caliber.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a salary dump. I mean, let's be honest. Like, I mean, this is a very good player. Like, it's one thing. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say this is a player that is probably worth the contract that he's making.
Yeah, I think this might have been a case where he just got caught up a little too much in wanting to move him. You know, that when you're moving a guy like this at the deadline, the one thing about trading at the deadline is you're limited on your trading partners a lot of times. I mean, if you would have held off and dealt him in the offseason, I think you would have had a lot more interested parties in that to potentially get more out of it.
I also think, I don't know, did Mike ever put up a trade block with Suzuki on it?
Yes, and it was caused by me asking about it a couple months ago.
And that's fair, but you know,
I asked him about it. I was like, I don't think there's any way to make the contract work, but I'm interested in Suzuki. And he's like, maybe I should see if anyone else is interested. And he posted the trade block.
I feel like maybe you should have held off. I think JR's right. Maybe you should have held off to the offseason. John saying he spoke with him also.
Now, to be fair, Tim Carlin could turn into a really special player, but a player of Suzuki's caliber, I think you could have gotten one more player close to Carlin's abilities, and Houston has the players to add them on.
Yeah, I would have wanted at least two guys who were, you know, pretty good prospects, pretty likely to turn out to be really good players in order to move him here at the deadline without, really taking a look around.
I mean, honestly, if you compare the return that Colorado got for Suzuki compared to what I got back for Frank, you can say that they're fairly comparable in terms of overall. And Frank is not the player that Suzuki is value-wise.
And I don't know what the negotiations look like at all, but you're telling me you wouldn't have the potential to get, maybe a Devin Freshwater or a Juan Pierre or even a Jeremy Workman out of this deal at all. Like, I feel like you could have swung that a little bit.
The Houston organization is loaded. And if they're going to go out and try to get a player of Suzuki's caliber, ask for the moon from them because they have the players to do it.
Yeah.
But kudos to Houston for pulling that off. Because it takes a scary offense and makes it a heck of a lot scarier. And this might be a momentum swing because LA had just taken over the division lead in the AL West. And Houston is needed to do something to try to turn it around. And they add one of the best bats in the majors to do so.
Looking at the standings right now, Houston 3 games back of LA. Chicago and Cleveland tied atop the division with Minnesota 2 games back. Boston 3 back of Baltimore. In the NL, 4.5 back is Washington. Chicago with a 7.5 lead on St. Louis. San Diego with a half-game lead on San Francisco. Wildcard teams currently sit at San Francisco and St. Louis with Washington 1 back. And Milwaukee 2 back. The Dodgers 2.5 back. And then in the AL, it's Houston and Seattle with Boston 2 back, Cleveland and Chicago 2.5, Minnesota at 4.5 back, and Texas at 6 back in the wild card race. Just giving you a little standings update just past the trade deadline here.
I think I've seen this movie before where the Nationals just sneak into the playoffs and then run the table and go to the World Series.
It's pretty much where they were last year, except it was it the Phillies still at the top, or was it the Mets?
I think it was the Mets at this point in time,
I
but
think it was
Yeah.
the Mets,
those three
yeah.
teams were all pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult with 6 weeks out of Joe Diggs, though. That will make coming back for them a lot more difficult.
It will.
Yeah, I'll just say in terms of my positioning, I will be happy if I make the playoffs as a wild card team, because 7.5 back is going to be hard to overcome, especially with the way the Cubs have been playing. My Frank deal was slightly more with the future in mind. Lon Sway I brought in to help fill the void of losing Frank, and when I get Flaherty and Loaisiga back from injury, my pitching staff is pretty deep. So if I make the wild card here, great. I don't know if I have enough of a team to make the World Series, but we're looking to the future.
Tampa's looking forward to next year, gentlemen.
Yep. I think the only one of us four with the real World Series chances is the Orioles down there.
Yeah.
We will avenge ourselves eventually, whether it's this year or in your future.
By the way, fellow eMLB GMs, take a look at what Brendan just did to his CCP at AAA.
Do you want me to pull it up?
I can pull it up.
No. OSA hasn't updated it yet.
Oh, OSA has. Oh, because you went and rescouted him.
Yeah. So let's.
Ladies and gentlemen, as well, if you have any questions you'd like to ask any of us on here, we're about to get.
Yes, let's talk about
coming up next.
While he pulls, I have the comment I want to talk about once after Brendan pulls it up. Yeah, there he is. Now you add that to Nutball Reed coming back from injury next year, and Ethan Knight
with Buster Bluth, Nick Spence,
and
Jeff
what was his overall before the boost that you put in? His potential.
My scout had it as a 43.
Yeah. I'm just gonna let that sit there and say, look back at the conversation we had in the rule changes.
I'm gonna need Daffy in the chart, buddy.
You know what? You know what I say here? You know what I say to that? Why the
not? I got the time for you, Andrew. I'll make sure to send it to you.
Whatever. That's all I'm gonna say.
At 107, I'll write it down.
All right, we can take that off the screen now. All right, I want to talk about this though. Tim makes a good point, and I was actually going to bring this up. The 4 divisions next year are going to be crazy competitive. I'm going to tweak that and say the 2 Western divisions are going to be a heck of a lot competitive.
You know what? The AL East is going to be pretty good too. That's a division with Cleveland, Boston, Tampa, and Baltimore in it.
Yes, but look at the NL West with the Padres and Giants. The Dodgers are on the upswing, and then you add the Cardinals and the Cubs to the West,
and the
Brewers, those are the top 3 teams in the divisions as they stand right now for each of them, and those. Yeah,
I'm excited about the NL East.
Yeah,
the NL East is going to be really winnable for every team.
And you know what?
Except for Miami.
Except for Miami. And you know what? I think depending on what Kenny does this offseason, I think he's in a really good spot with Atlanta. I think Hebrew is outperforming what he should, depending on what the Washington Nationals can do. And JR, I think you benefit from getting out of the NL Central and getting away from Chicago, Milwaukee, and
St. Louis.
And
you have the expansion team coming in who we know is going to have some growing pains in the first season.
The death of the Central divisions will bring life back to the Reds' title hopes.
JR? Hold on. Let's play this game real quick. Is JR the favorite in the new division?
No, it's still going to be Washington.
Well, you know what? I'll say this: roster construction wise, I would give a lot of ground to Cincinnati, depending on what pitching upgrades you're going to make. But it's way too early to even start thinking about.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to the offseason yet.
And I know we talk a lot of crap about Cody in Pittsburgh, but he still has a pretty decent roster.
Yeah, I feel like his roster has back-to-back seasons now underperformed where they should have been.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if it's like a ballpark factor or just a wrong combination. I don't know what it is. I thought, honestly, JR, I thought that you getting Barrios would have helped Cody more because, let's be honest, Barrios is not the best locker room guy.
Yeah.
I thought that might have helped Cody with his team cohesion and chemistry, but it doesn't seem to be working that way.
All right, gentlemen, let's move to a Here's Why You're Wrong favorite.
Oh, no. Hot seat time.
The favorite segment. It's time to go in the hot seat.
Hey, we didn't even talk about the American League.
Oh,
like,
fine,
the AL West is still going to be stacked, too.
We'll go back to it for a second. The AL West is going to, and the AL East is going to be a great division, too.
But here's the thing. I'm trying to remember. Kansas City's going to move to the West, right?
Is it Kansas City and Minnesota head to the West?
Along with the expansion Portland. And
yep,
you add that you add that with the Athletics, and I think the AL West is going to have the biggest disparity between the top 4 teams and the bottom 4 teams because you have Oakland, expansion team Portland, who is it's just a nature of being an expansion team. You're not going to be very good first starting out. And Kansas City, who's rebuilding, as well as no, the bottom 3 compared to the top 5, because Minnesota has made some strides this year. But like the Angels, the Astros, Mariners, Rangers, and Minnesota, it's going to be a juggernaut to get through. And then the poor 3 teams at the bottom are just going to get beat up on.
Well, that's like in the AL East too. I mean, at the top, you're going to have Baltimore, Boston, Tampa,
Cleveland, Chicago, and the Yankees.
I mean, the Yankees are putting together still a decent roster at the bottom there. I feel bad for Detroit, and I feel bad for Detroit, Toronto. And Toronto can still be a juggernaut. Like, I feel bad for the 2 of them, but I think it may not have the top highest level teams, but 1 through 8, it might be one of the closest divisions.
It's worth looking at what Toronto's building with their pitching staff.
Oh. I mean, I said this in our off-season review on the Insider. I think Toronto made the right moves last offseason for a rebuilding team, and I think it's only a matter of time before Toronto is a perennial contender.
Led by Jordan Cage at shortstop.
That's right.
All right.
I see the first question. I'm gonna bring it up.
So are we gonna do this as hot seat, or is this a little Q&A section?
Let's do a little Q&A. We can do hot seat. We can. I just wanted to address this question because Hetz already kind of gave away my answer. So Tim asked, what's the biggest move you couldn't pull off during the trade deadline? And then Hetz follows it up with, our biggest move we couldn't pull off was Adele with St. Louis. So he gave away who I was talking with Adele. I think the biggest thing is that the reason why Hetz was hesitant to keep, we just threw out a couple of names. We weren't like close to making a deal. And I think the biggest reason is because he had just agreed to the Hicks trade with JR. I think that much movement going back and forth was like, I don't know if I want to keep giving up some players to add Adele.
If anyone else has any questions, drop them in. We'll answer them through this Q&A session. JR, what's the biggest move that you couldn't make?
I actually had another piece to it. I was also in talks with multiple teams, not just at the trade deadline, but throughout the last month or so in Sim for Dominic Aguilera. There were multiple teams that were interested in Dominic Aguilera. I ultimately did not find a team that was willing to. I probably overvalued him, but as a commish CCP, I kind of like that on my team. And he's starting finally hitting the ball better this year, kind of going back to what he was the past couple of years. So I did not find a trade partner, but his multiple teams talked with me about Dominic Aguilera. I don't regret it. I don't regret not moving him. So we'll see if another team comes up with an offer in the future that if they want him that bad.
JR, what was your biggest move that didn't happen?
I don't think there was one. I mean, everybody that I, had.
Yeah, you kept checking off your trade block list.
Yeah, I mean, right before the trade deadline, my team, really ran into a rut, and then we lost Trey Griffey for 6 weeks. So, I had thought about buying a little bit. That's why I had asked you about Cunell kind of earlier on, but in advance of the trade deadline, thinking that maybe I had an outside shot at the wild card. But, once I kind of went on that skid and lost Trey, for me, it was, all right, I gotta, if I can sell off some of these pieces, I will. And, getting rid of Freeland, just to get him off the books was a big thing for me. I knew Hicks would be one of the pieces I could really cash in to get some talent. And then, if I could get a decent deal for McCullers, I would move him. So, I mean, really, there really isn't anything that I wanted to try to pull off that didn't happen.
Once again, any other questions, drop them down below so we can answer them. Brennan, your biggest trade that didn't happen?
I'm always talking trades. I'm always exploring. But I feel like your answer will be the same answer that I'm going to give. And I'm surprised Andrew didn't give, because we briefly discussed a multi-party trade here from the podcast fellows, but that didn't end up going through.
Yeah, and who was the one that backed out of it?
Yeah, because I didn't like it. But...
Yeah, exactly. It was you.
I don't blame him. I probably had two.
Well, actually, let me make a comment on Brendan's though. If we had pulled that off, Frank probably wasn't moving.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I got a more interesting question that Tom just asked here.
Hold on, can I not answer?
Oh, I don't
let
know.
Answer his first.
Wow. There we go. I brought him. I'd say, I had two. One of them was never really close, but I'm not exactly going to reveal it just because I'm still working towards it, in a sense of the word, for the offseason. But another one was bringing in Gene Hughes from Baltimore. I was pushing hard to bring him in. We just couldn't reach an agreement that made sense for either of our teams.
And now he's not even on Baltimore anymore, so you got to convince another
team. The player
team.
I wanted isn't even on Tampa anymore, so.
Exactly.
Oh.
So.
Ooh. I could take a wild guess as to who it was.
Yeah, it was Kunel.
It was
Kunel plus others, because I wasn't going to send a starter for just Lieber. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now you can bring up the next question, Brendan.
All right, here's Tom's question.
So basically, he's asking who's the Kansas City Royals of this year, essentially.
Tampa. That's what I think. I think Tampa's roster is pretty good. I think they could make a serious challenge for that second wildcard spot in the AL.
Hey, their GM's a pretty good GM too. I'd say.
About that, but having anybody in there is better than having no GM. So.
It's true. I'm like trying to look at the.
Are we talking about a team that's kind of outside of the playoffs picture looking in that could make a run to be a playoff
I'd say like
team?
the Royals.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. I'm honestly surprised that Texas is around 500 right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if they started making a run for a wild card spot, challenging the Mariners for that second one. The problem is that they have to face a lot of their own division, and they'll have to beat some of the top competition in order to do so. But I believe they're not too much changed from last year in terms of their roster construction. And that was a playoff team last year. So I can see Texas making a run, even if they're one game under 500 right now.
For me, it would be Detroit. I mean, Detroit still has, a lot of talent on that team. I know Mark has not been able to be very active this season. But again, they're still only, 6.5 games back of the division, even though they're in fourth place. But I mean, there's still time to make that up potentially and come out of that division with the talent that roster has.
I'm going to go ahead and go with another AL Central team, even though they're tied for the division lead. I feel like not a lot of us give enough credit to Jay Hedges, and I know I've been talking about him a lot, especially on our Here's Why You're Wrong. But I think Jay Hedges has a really good team there, led by Ed Brown. That it's a team that can do a lot. It's a team that can do a lot.
Yeah,
they're a really good representation of the ratings aren't everything philosophy.
Yes.
Denny Martinez is a GOAT right now.
Let's go ahead and look at Tom's next question. Who are your early favorites for Rookie of the Year? I think the NL.
Okay,
has to be
NL
Trey
is
Griffey.
obvious. Now, well, JR, do you think the injury will have an effect on Trey Griffey's Rookie of the Year campaign?
I based on the length of time, I think he comes back for September. So, as long as he comes back in September and has another good month there, I think he's still, pretty solidly the Rookie of the Year there. I mean, I think it obviously takes away him potentially pulling off the Rookie of the Year MVP double that he had a chance at, but I think he still is the pretty big favorite there.
I think the fact that Pearson left the NL and went to the AL really helped Trey Griffey, especially with the injury.
I'm sorry, he was third on the list behind Benny Rodriguez, just saying.
According to who?
Me.
The list is just objectively wrong.
According to who? It was me.
You mean according to whom?
Correcting grammar on the podcast.
The AL Rookie of the Year is a little bit more of an interesting conversation. I'm not sure who to take.
I'll go ahead and say my choice. I'm going to go with Martin Bradford in Cleveland.
Yeah.
I'm going Grayson Rowan.
Is Grayson Rowan a rookie?
No, I thought he played last
No,
year.
he's not.
Okay. For some reason, I thought he was.
Barry Allen's only played 44 games, but he's got a solid chance at it.
In that case, I'm taking Aiden Pearson. What league is he eligible for? This is what I don't know. Look at the stats.
Homer.
Look at the stats.
I was a homer with Benny Rodriguez, so.
Yeah, but we know, we expect that.
You and I both know that I'm not as much of a homer as you
I
know
know
to be.
Hold on. This season, so far in 2026, across 83 games, he's hitting 279 with 25 homers, 53 RBIs. He also has 15 doubles to that credit as well. OPS a little bit lower than I'd like, but a 130 OPS plus a 3.9 WAR. Plus, you look at him defensively as well, a grand total of 4 errors this season, and he's got a 995 fielding percentage, a zone rating of 1.3, and then as well, he has got a 31.5 runners thrown out percentage.
I think by the end of the season, it's going to be Ed Brown. I mean, he's already
I forget.
He's already a little over 3 WAR at this point, and I think he's just going to really continue to pick it up down the stretch. Especially, especially if the White Sox continue to stay atop that division, and he's a big part of that happening.
Yeah, I think
it's we named the top 3 contenders. It's going to be between Bradford, Brown, and Pearson, for sure.
Sure. All right, gentlemen, it's time for my favorite segment of Here's Why You're Wrong, and today the duo podcast. It's time for the hot seat.
I don't know why I got to go first, but okay.
You were the guy selected. So, gentlemen, for this one, it just comes off the top of your head. Each one of the 3 of us who are sitting on the side will ask the person sitting in the hot seat a question. Are you gentlemen ready?
I'm going to have a harder time thinking up questions than I am the answers.
Yep. All right. I'll go ahead and start it with a relatively easy one. Andrew, who's the winner of the trade deadline?
In terms, I said it earlier, San Francisco. I think they address the team needs that'll give them the playoff push.
JR or Brendan, one of you two want to go next?
I wasn't sure which order we were going to do this in, and I don't even have a question yet. So, JR, you got one?
Yeah, I got one for you. So Anju, looking ahead to the second half, which one of these deals do you think one of these teams that's in the playoff contention is going to regret making?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's in playoff contention. That's going to regret what they did. Only because he was talking about it being a big risk. I think Brendan's move for Woodford. It's a high risk, high reward scenario.
Yeah.
Who has the better second half into the season, Lonzo Way or Frank? By ERA. We'll go by ERA. No peripherals.
Just ERA.
That's just ERA.
I'm gonna go with Lonsway because of who Frank has to face in the AL West.
That's fair.
Not because of talent between the two. Frank right now is the better pitcher for sure, but I think he's got a lot more problems to deal with than Lonsway does.
Yeah. All right, JR, you're on the hot seat. You ready to go? All right.
It froze on you.
I'll leave this one off. JR, when all is said and done, when your CCPs retire, which one will have the best career?
The best career? I think it's going to be Trey Griffey. Yeah.
All right. Next year's National League East, who's going to win the division?
Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I have confidence in my young pitching to take this step forward, combined with the offense to lead us to the playoffs.
Now, if you had been in the NL West, would you have said that with the same confidence?
No, not at all. I mean, come on, look, I've got an easy road. I mean, look at these teams.
Calling out the NL East.
I did try to put you in the NL West. Go back to the old school.
It's true. It's true. I would have ended up in the East.
With the alignment for next year, what do you think the odds are that Anjou finishes 5th or worst in the West?
5th or worst?
We gotta call out me like that.
I think the odds are pretty good.
Over 50%.
Over 50%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Behind San Diego, behind San Francisco, behind Chicago. Do you think I'm gonna finish behind the Dodgers?
Either the Dodgers or potentially the Brewers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or the Diamondbacks. Again, the Diamondbacks still have a pretty good base of talent there.
Yeah.
The NL West is going to be the most competitive division. I'm just saying it right now.
I'll hop in. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Do the Nationals go to another World Series this year?
Do the Nationals?
Yeah.
No.
Who will have the better career, Aiden Pearson or Hamilton Porter?
Aiden Pearson. For the simple fact that I'm active.
That's fair.
Well, yeah, that is fair. Yeah.
And he's got the better catcher ability.
Thoughts and prayers out to Charlie.
Thoughts and prayers to Charles.
Sure. Yeah. Charles, not Charlie. Why did I say Charlie?
Sorry. Who finishes higher in the revised AL East next year, Baltimore or Tampa Bay?
Look at it breaking him.
He's got a CCP coming.
Who knows what's going to happen this offseason? You know what? Tampa Bay. Why not? Who knows what's going to happen this offseason?
I like how he started turning red.
So we all know what really went on in his head. He just didn't want to say it.
I couldn't say it.
I'll take the answer as it was given.
Yeah. All right, Brendan, you're in the hot seat.
All right, I have the question.
Go, Andrew.
Of the two, well, I guess we can't really say anything about the expansion teams because we don't know what players are on them yet. So I'm nixing that question. Let me think of another one.
I got one. So based on what happened at the trade deadline, did any of your predictions change for any of the division winners?
Ooh.
Based on the trade deadline or based on the current standings? Because he wants to change his prediction about the NL Central.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, basically, who you thought was going to win before the trade deadline versus after.
Oh, so like not like preseason, like going into the trade.
Right.
Deadline.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a better question.
You know what? No, I think actually every team that I thought had the best chance to win the division pretty much just solidified their chances, with the exception of Philadelphia. And I think Philadelphia's got enough of a cushion. I think every team at the top either tried to win, or in the Central's case, it's so much of a cluster mess that no one has any idea what's going to happen.
What about the NL West? The Padres didn't really make any moves.
I know, and I personally feel like the Giants were going to win that, even going into the trade deadline.
Fair enough.
So did you two both ask a question?
I have not asked one yet. I'm trying to think of one.
I am too. That's why I'm like.
This is like the lukewarm seat.
Yeah.
Based on where we are right now, give us your World Series matchup. For
World
this
Series
year.
matchup? Baltimore, San Diego.
All right.
I'm going back.
All right.
Gonna have to go through Houston or LA to get there.
Keyword, or.
Yes,
Fair enough.
but it's gonna have to be one of them, and they're both scary.
A, maybe. B, we did go 4-2 against Houston in the season series this year.
All right. Hold on.
And I beat LA last year.
Also fair.
Let's see here. Sorry, I'm just trying to look for something exactly. Just trying to look for it here. All right. When all is when all is said and done here, Brennan, who has a better career? All right. Jacob McKnight or Joey Chestnut?
Joey Chestnut, he's the GOAT. He's the greatest athlete to ever do any sport ever of all time, and he will never, ever, ever be beat in anything.
He also sells houses.
It's the next Danny Smith Jr.
Yes, he is.
He also sells houses on the side.
Yes, he does.
Everyone that moved to Cincinnati, hit him up.
Yeah, anyone that moved to Cincinnati. His number's in the Discord. Just hit him up. You know? Well, I think this has been a very successful and a very fun live episode of a crossover matchup between Here's Why You're Wrong and the Gentlemen of the Insiders. I don't know if if we should be thanking you as the insiders or what should happen here to thank each other for coming on, but I guess we'll just do a little bit of both. Thank you guys for coming on, and thank you for having us on. It was exciting.
Thank you.
No.
You got mixed up.
I know. I got mixed up because it's split in my head. We appreciate all you guys joining us and all your questions. It was a whole lot of fun to interact with you guys. We'll have to do this again sometime. This is fun. I like doing this live stuff.
And also, thank you for all the people that are watching the YouTube VOD at a later date.
Exactly. Thank you. We appreciate
Boost the YouTube channel.
Boost the YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe. Join the Discord. Do all that fun stuff. And I guess this is as great a time to tell any. Until next time, we appreciate you joining us. For Brendan, for JR, Andrew, and myself, Aiden, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time on The Insiders, and Here's Why You're Wrong.